Hi, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in today. The Johnson Center presents free webinars several times throughout the year, and you can see the list of upcoming webinars by going to our website at www.johnson-center.org, then clicking on the webinars link on the right-hand side. We do have a lot of great programs that provide support and assistance for children and families, including grants and sliding fee scales from many supports and services, including assessments, counseling, sibling camps, and more. If you'd like information about these programs and financial support, then just contact us here at the Johnson Center. I'll put the contact information up at the end of the presentation. Be sure to follow our colleagues at the Autism Research Institute, as they also host great webinars and share some great resources on their website and social media pages. If you'd like a certificate of attendance after today's webinar, just look for a follow-up email in your mailbox 1 hour after the webinar concludes today, or look for the link on our YouTube channel in the webinar description. It will contain instructions on how to get your certificate. If you have questions during the live presentation of the webinar, please type them in your GoToWebinar control panel or email info, I-N-F-O, at johnson-center.org. If you're watching a recording of this webinar, you may also email questions to the presenter at info@johnson-center.org. And be sure to check out our library of past webinars on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/The Johnson Center. So let's get started today. My name is Anissa Ryland, and I'm the director here at the Johnson Center. And today's webinar is going to focus on raising community-minded kids. The inspiration for this webinar came from a few sources. First, we often have groups and families with young children who volunteer at some of our programs and events, and it's always a very special and positive experience to see young people find their own voice and find confidence in ways that they can make a difference and have their contributions be valued and help their communities. I was recently having a conversation with a group of teenagers, and it was really eye-opening. We were talking about the state of the world and issues they're concerned with or care about, and I was really impressed with how informed they were and the critical way that they approached their beliefs and their virtues and their values, but it was also evident that they were really frustrated and felt like they lacked an outlet to express their beliefs and find ways that they could make a positive impact. So I started doing some research, and today I'm going to discuss a lot of what I found in that process. Another source of inspiration for today's topic was from our work with kids who are gifted or twice exceptional and who often have a really strong sense of justice. This awareness and sensitivity can often lead to a lot of worry or anxiety, and learning ways to support them, shape, and respond to this characteristic can really go a long way in helping kids develop positive coping skills when faced with situations that they might otherwise find worrying or anxiety-inducing. Another important thing to talk about when we're talking about being community-minded is inclusion. Inclusion means that people, all people, regardless of their abilities, disabilities, or healthcare needs, have the right to be respected and appreciated as valuable members of their communities and participate in work, recreation, and education. In order to foster inclusive communities and opportunities, we have to be mindful of the needs of others and actively plan and promote for the inclusion and appreciation of all community members. So in today's talk, we're going to talk about what it means to be community-minded, the benefits that can be conferred or shared when you do so, some suggestions and things to think about when you're getting started, and if time allows, some questions and suggestions from each of you. So remember, if you have questions or suggestions, use your GoToWebinar panel there to enter them, and we'll get to those, or you can email info, I-N-F-O, at johnson-center.org. So let's get started with talking about what I mean when I say community-minded. Really simply, what I mean is being interested in helping the wider community and becoming socially aware and concerned. This is a process we continue to learn over our lifetimes as we experience new things and we continue to develop all of our executive functioning skills, our empathy, and our awareness. And it's really important for many reasons, really more than we can even go into today. But one particular thing I do want to reiterate is that a part of being community-minded is learning and being aware of the perspective, feelings, and experiences of other people. And when we do this, we really foster a more inclusive, supportive, and welcoming community. As for kids, they generally have a terrific capacity for caring and start learning to empathize from a really young age. As they grow up, they become more aware of the needs of the people around them, and their burgeoning compassion is really something that we can nurture and support in many ways. And we're going to talk about a lot of those today. But first, let's talk about why we would do this. Why should we be concerned with being community-minded, let alone prioritize it for our children? There are really many known benefits to being involved in and contributing our time, resources, and efforts to our communities and causes that we care about. Of course, there are the benefits to the organization or the people or the cause that we serve, and that's one of the greatest reasons, making a difference. But there are benefits to the people who are actively seeking to be community-minded as well. One of the first benefits I want to talk about is building and expanding connections. When people work together in their community or for causes they care about, they build social connections based on shared values and ideas. These relationships, these experiences, they can help to form a more connected community. These connections can also help to address feelings of isolation or loneliness, help build important networks for both personal support and business connections, and serve as a conduit for new ideas and to help raise awareness about certain issues. Another benefit is skill building. There are a lot of great opportunities to learn new skills and improve on existing ones when you get involved and contribute to your community. When I was thinking about this, I was recalling some of the volunteer projects and programs that I've had the opportunity to be involved with, and I realized that there really are some great social and communication skills that volunteers and community leaders have to learn and work on that translate into really some pretty significant leadership experiences. For example, when working in the community, you're often given examples of or engage in creative problem solving. Whether you're just stretching limited resources, or you're organizing large groups of people, or just learning to understand new issues or new programs, there are lots of opportunities to see and engage in quick thinking and creative solutions. Another skill that's often used is being flexible. Often in community programs, there are challenges that truly require flexibility. Let's say all of the volunteers didn't show up for a project, or maybe too many showed up. It's a good problem to have. Or supplies that you need don't come through, or it rains the day of an outdoor event. Learning to be flexible while still being true to the objective that brought you there in the first place is really a critical and meaningful skill. Another opportunity for growth that sometimes presents itself when getting involved is learning to take initiative. If you're working for a cause that you care about, it's motivating, and given that you're probably volunteering your time to be there, this often opens the door to being more comfortable with taking risks, sharing ideas, stepping up to fill a need. As a volunteer, you might be more willing to take some risks with sharing those ideas or stepping up for a project you care about because you know there's a need to fill and you care about it, and the stakes might be a little less than some, say, on your job or in your personal relationships, and so you may be willing to do that. Doing this is and seeing the difference that you can make and help building your own self-confidence really translates into other areas of your life. These skills are all things that can benefit you everywhere, including helping you gain experience and knowledge that can help to advance your relationships and your career. Another benefit to being community-minded and getting involved, and a great motivator for all of us, is that there's really quite a bit of research that tells us that volunteering and being involved in our communities is good for our health. I can show you later a list of some of the studies and resources that I'm referring to, but there have been many research studies that have demonstrated the health benefits involved with being community-minded or being involved. One of those that was done right here in Texas looked at data from a survey done back in, I think, 2004, and found that people who volunteered had statistically better health outcomes than those who didn't. There was a study done at Carnegie Mellon University that said in their conclusion that 200 hours of volunteering per year correlated in significantly lower blood pressure. There was a 2012 study that was published in the journal Health Psychology that found that participants who regularly volunteered to help live longer. The Office of Research and Policy Development published a paper called The Health Benefits of Volunteering, and they concluded that people who are able to contribute and help their community improve their own health, even showing they have lower rates of depression and that they live longer. In a paper that was published by Harvard Health, the authors cited what they call the happiness effect for volunteers, because they showed that weekly volunteering leads to happiness levels that are comparable to getting a life-changing salary increase. So there's a lot of great health benefits to getting involved and caring about your community. But what about the kids? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about raising kids who are community-minded And there really are many benefits, particularly for children, when they participate and have the chance to contribute to their community or a cause that they care about. Getting involved in the community really can help children gain a better sense of responsibility and commitment. Recognizing that they can play a part in helping others or serving a cause that they care about can inspire kids with a sense of purpose and self-confidence. Recognizing that their efforts and ideas have value and meaning is really a great way to begin to teach these skills and values. Research has shown that children who volunteer not only gain a better overall sense of responsibility, but they're also less likely to engage in risky behavior. One study demonstrated that kids who volunteer just 1 hour per week are 50% less likely to abuse drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, or become pregnant than those children who don't volunteer. Being involved and community-minded also helps children to learn empathy and understanding. Teaching children to be compassionate and interested about others is really easiest when the kids have the opportunity to see firsthand the experiences of other people. Kids are far more likely to relate to and feel for people who have relatable experiences, so being able to see them, talk to them, or help other people not only helps them understand those needs of others, but really can also help them cope with those big feelings that come with starting to see the bigger challenges in our world. This experience can also help give a child some perspective on their own experiences and challenges. Knowing that there are other people with challenges, either like yours or different than yours, and knowing that you have the power to help them or support them can really be a powerful lesson and perspective for kids to gain. And just like adults, community-minded thoughts and actions convey some pretty significant health benefits for kids. First, studies show that children who volunteer when they're younger are more likely to continue to volunteer when they're older, so they're going to have access to all of those benefits I talked about just a few minutes ago. As also talked about before, some of the health benefits for kids include lower risk of cardiovascular disease, as well as counteracting effects of things like stress, anger, depression, and anxiety. And I think those of us who work in the field and community of mental health and developmental disorders know that anxiety is something that is a really big issue, particularly for preteens and teens right now. And so finding tools that can help them deal with all of that anxiety can be really helpful. They're wrestling with the challenges of adolescence. They're trying to find purpose and a sense of what it is increasingly becoming a really huge, really connected world, which has some great benefits, but can also be pretty overwhelming. So finding some empowerment and ways to take control and address some of those issues can be really helpful. Getting involved in the community is really also a great way to develop and practice important social skills. Community engagement often means you're meeting with people who have common interests, so it's a great way to connect and build relationships. It's often a really good space for this, since while you're volunteering, you're also gaining self-confidence, given that you're helping others and helping your community. And depending on the activity or program, there's often opportunities to learn many critical social skills. Things like compromise, advocacy, empathy, cooperation, flexibility are all really important skills that often come up when you're working in your community. Volunteering can also lead to improvement in grades and self-esteem. One study that analyzed data from the National Education Longitudinal Study found that students who were more civically engaged performed better in school subjects like reading, history, science, and math, and they were more likely to graduate from high school. Researchers have also found that community service enhances problem-solving skills, improves the ability to work within a team, and teaches students better time management skills. So it really can be beneficial in the academic setting as well as social settings. What about families who work in or serve their communities together? Well, a lot of those benefits we've talked about, or actually all of them, are conveyed there as well. And there's some specific benefits to taking community-minded action as a family. The activities and participation are time that you can bring your family closer together and give you an opportunity to discuss and share your values with your children. It's a terrific way to model gratitude and compassion, and it also opens up opportunities for really great discussions about a whole host of topics. And really, honestly, it can simply be a great way to spend time together and have some fun together. And I think it's really important to point out that all of these benefits and reasons apply equally, if not more so, to children and adults who have been diagnosed with a disability. The opportunity to find a community, work with purpose, have the opportunity to build and expand on skills, including social skills, job skills, and leadership skills, reap the health benefits that are involved, and give time and energy to something that you care about are just some of the reasons why being community-minded and getting involved should be an opportunity and priority for children and adults who have a disability or diagnosis of physical or an intellectual challenge or developmental delay. The ARC, the National ARC Organization, has some great resources on their site on ways that case managers, caregivers, and supporters and allies can promote and provide inclusive volunteer opportunities. Some of these tips include learning and matching the participants' interests to help them find meaningful opportunities to get involved. They suggest asking questions like, what do you like to do in the community? Or what are things that you don't like to do? Are there problems you know about and want to help fix? Where do you like to go or not like to go? Or are there groups that you want to get to know better? If a person has communication challenges, you can look at the activities and things that they enjoy and places that they like to go to help determine what might be a good place or activity to help them start to be involved. Another great suggestion made by the ARC is to try and find unique opportunities, because it's often the case that once people are aware of inclusive opportunities, a lot of people will then seek out the same location based on that good word of mouth. And that's a good thing, but it also can minimize the opportunities and undercut the opportunity for social inclusion. So to avoid stepping into or creating segregated volunteer positions, try to continually seek out new and unique opportunities. You need to be ready to educate volunteer coordinators or program staff, as they may not yet be aware of all the gifts or talents and strengths that volunteers with a disability diagnosis might bring. There are some great resources online that can help you with this, but on a personal level, try to give concrete examples of the person's skills or interests, abilities, and experiences in ways that you might be able to provide support if needed. When looking at those opportunities and these volunteer opportunities, try to look for places where there are well-connected, kind of go-getting volunteers and the places that they tend to go. As we've talked about, one of the great benefits of volunteering is making connections and building relationships, and connecting with these active volunteers who have a lot of experience in this can really help to grow bigger and stronger networks, to be able to identify future opportunities with people who are supportive and recognize the importance and the value of inclusion. And last, I recommend keeping in mind that volunteering is not the end goal. It's something we do to find things like community, purpose, and to learn new skills and meet new people. Be sure to keep this in mind and continue to evaluate and reevaluate whether or not the current involvement or placement is still the right fit. Allowing a volunteer opportunity to stagnate for anyone, or keeping someone in a mismatched situation, really undercuts some of the benefits we've discussed, and it's one particular danger for people who might have a communication challenge or intellectual or developmental difference. So we need to be mindful of that and looking out for ways to make sure that the placement is the right one, because even one that might have been the right one once may not be after they've been there for a while. Okay, so now we know, we get it. There's lots of benefits involved to thinking about your community, getting involved in your community, giving of yourself to others. We get it. We get that cultivating a community mindset has great benefits for everyone, including children, including families. We know it's a good thing. So now what do we do? What are some of the considerations and steps to take to begin to cultivate that community mindset in your children and in your family and get involved? First, it really has to be said that our kids typically watch and learn from everything that we do. By you caring and getting involved and giving back to the community and causes that you care about, you can show them firsthand how being community-minded can make a difference and how good it can feel to help other people and other causes and be able to make a difference and enact change. It's also really a valuable way for you as a parent to get to know different organizations in your community and find resources and activities that your children and your entire family might be able to get involved with. A child's community and culture certainly influences the likelihood that they themselves will get involved. Adolescents with multiple role models have been shown to be more likely to volunteer. If you look at this graph from childtrends.org, it shows that approximately 50% of teens volunteered, even if they didn't have any role models who were volunteering. But knowing other peers, either peers or adults who volunteer, certainly increase the likelihood that that child would volunteer. If you'll see in the second graph, having friends who volunteered increased the likelihood of volunteering to 73%. Having only adult role models increased that likelihood to 81%. But if they have both peers and adults who volunteered, 96% of teens then reported volunteering themselves. Another really important step is to talk about it. Even with younger children, you can take opportunities to point out and reinforce qualities like generosity, kindness, or compassion. Whether it's a simple, thoughtful gesture to a friend, taking a meal to someone who's sick, offering a snack to someone who's hungry, or a reciprocated wave and a smile to a stranger, take every opportunity you can to point out these positive virtues. As kids get older, you can use these situations to talk about more difficult subjects, like encounters with people who don't have homes, or talking about complex subjects they see on the news, or subjects that might present themselves in books or television shows or movies that you're watching. These conversations can help your child frame difficult situations as they grow up and encounter them in the future. It's also really important to make it a point to learn about issues, causes, and organizations together as a family. While talking about big issues can be challenging and overwhelming, learning about the programs and people who are making a difference is a great way to empower kids and avoid that sense of despair and frustration. I'll share a personal example on this. My youngest son is a pretty empathetic and sensitive kid, and he recently had a school project where he spent a lot of time researching and learning about the impact of rising sea temperatures and sea levels and the impact on particular countries, particularly the Maldives. And as he learned about the islands that had already been lost and the overcrowding on the remaining islands and the people who have been forced to flee their homes and the dire scientific predictions for the future, he really became increasingly distressed. So we spent some time doing some research, including watching a terrific documentary on a group who's working to raise awareness on these issues among the people in the Maldives. We read proposals and recommendations from scientific authorities on ways to address and combat the impact. We read testimonials from other countries who welcomed and assisted those people who had lost their homes. And we just did our research together. And then together we devised a list of ways that we could help be a part of the solution, and have continued to watch and learn from other community activists, including some great work by some young people who are coming up with some really innovative and creative ideas. So by doing that research together and talking about it, he was really encouraged and comforted by this work, and now he knows he's part of a community of people who are trying to help make a difference in a cause that now matters to him and he cares about. So now I want to take a minute to address what I'm sure is the elephant in the room for everybody who's listening. I absolutely understand that what I'm saying, as I'm saying all these things, what's going through your heads. You can hear me, it's all great, how beneficial and how wonderful, but who has time for that? The truth is, this has been researched really well. According to studies, including research published in Psychological Science, conducted by places like the Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania, Harvard Business School, Yale School of Management, when people volunteer, it actually makes them feel like they have more time in their days. According to all the research, helping others increases our feelings of what's called time affluence. So even though we can't make more time in the day, we can't expand the 24 hours that we've been given, using our time to help others or help our community makes us feel highly effective and capable, translating to a more full and accomplished feeling in our day. And the more we feel accomplished and what we've done with our time matters, the more time we feel like we have. The research has also found that giving time makes us more willing to commit to future engagements despite our busy schedules. Once we experience that fullness or fulfillment that you get from volunteering, we're much more likely to give our time again. Now, I know it's really easy to say that. It's really easy to read research and say, oh yeah, sure. And then you look at your kid's schedule and your work schedule or your home schedule and the laundry and the doctor's appointments and the birthday party to prepare for and the bag on the back seat of the car with the 2 small shoes that needs to be returned that's been there for 3 weeks. I really hope that's not just me, but I get it. So then you start small. Pick an hour or two once a month on a Saturday morning and make it a family activity. Or start even smaller. Help your child pick out 5 books from their shelf they no longer need and talk about donating them to a local program or school. Just don't put them in a bag next to those shoes. Just find a way to get started. Once you do, you're going to start to see those benefits, and it's all going to kick in and grow from there. So now we're resolved, we're ready to take off and get started, and we're looking for some ideas. Let's talk about some practical suggestions and some ways that we can do this. So for those of you who have younger kids, there's some really simple ways you can start to influence and empower them and start to get across this idea of community-mindedness. You could set up a book exchange, gather books from friends or family or your own shelves and donate them to a local shelter or an after-school program, or even set up a little free library in your front yard. For those of you who aren't familiar with those, you can check it out at littlefreelibrary.org. This is a great way to talk about sharing, talk about ideas to share with your community and inspire readers. You could collect towels and blankets and supplies for local animal shelters and rescues. There's always a huge need for these, and this is something kids really understand in a tangible way and can see ways they can help. Providing bedding and comfort to animals who are waiting for homes is a great way to inspire compassion and motivate thoughtfulness in young kids. You could start at home, look at local garage sales or thrift shops, ask friends and family to pitch in. And many shelters and rescues are more than happy to let children who are donating come in and drop off their donations, meet some of the animals they're helping, giving kids a front row seat to the outcome of their efforts. And this can be really reinforcing to starting to teach this idea. You can volunteer for a park or a playground cleanup. This is especially great if it's a park or playground that you visit, as it gives you a chance to talk about taking care of the resources that you and the rest of your community use. Even really young children can get the concept of cleaning up and taking care of something that's a part of their community and their daily lives. You could start a giving jar or fund, and this can work in a lot of ways. You can start by collecting loose change around the house and giving it to a cause that you or your child care about. As kids get older, you can discuss saving a portion of their allowance for the giving jar. In my house, our rule has always been that 15% of your allowance goes in the giving jar, 15% of your allowance goes in savings, and then you get the rest. They take that once a year and they donate those savings that they put in the giving jar and give it to a charity of their choice. It's one way they can feel invested in the communities and causes that they care about and get a sense of what that feels like to contribute and support those. You can set up a giving registry or collection. This can also look lots of different ways. For example, if you're having a large party, say a birthday party, where you're inviting a lot of people and you don't really need 30 new books or Lego sets or whatever toys that are coming your way, you could talk to your child about it and see if there's a cause they want to support, whether that's maybe a local foster care agency, again, an animal shelter, something like that, where you can ask your attendees to bring canned food or towels and blankets for the shelter or toys for the foster system. Get your child involved and buy in and excited, and find a place that perhaps he could take those donations or she could take those donations, and again, see the fruits of their giving. That's reinforcing and helps them understand where they fit in that community involvement piece. Sometimes something as simple as feeding the birds in the winter and talking about how food is scarce then, and taking care of nurturing another living thing. Similar to that, you could plant a tree and talk about environmental issues and the benefits of trees and how that comes to help our community. There are great organizations you can find online who will even donate certain times of year saplings of trees for you to donate and plant. You could grow a vegetable or fruit garden and donate some of what you grow. There's a great family in the neighborhood I live in who has a giant vegetable garden in their front yard and a sign that says, "Help yourself." They pick what they need and leave the rest for their community. They donate some to the local church that prepares food once a week for the Senior Citizen Center. So there's ways that you can get involved with your time, but also contributing what you grow or create. You can offer to make treats for community helpers, whether that's taking goodies to your local fire station, police, EMTs, librarians, teachers, school crossing guards. We have all kinds of wonderful community helpers in our life, and giving a sign of appreciation and supporting them is a great way to show how to support other members in our community. Of course, one thing we can all often do as our kids grow up is donate their outgrown toys and clothes. For some kids, this is easier than others. I found for those kids that have a hard time letting go of things, finding a cause they care about where those things can go can make a big difference. So talking about how there are children in foster care who don't have any toys, or there are young children who only have one pair of shoes, and maybe they could use a second pair or an extra backpack. Things like that helps them understand that the thing that they love but no longer need is going to go to somebody who's going to love it as well. You could work together to make cards for the local senior citizen center and drop them off. Creating art, cards, happy drawings is always something that is appreciated. Just call, obviously, first before you go. Or you can take your kids with you to volunteer. You obviously need to check with the program or organization, but things like doing Meals on Wheels deliveries, or again, the park cleanup, or other programs often have opportunities for families to volunteer together. And even starting when they're very young can be a great way to show a sense of community coming together and doing things for others. Some places where you can look for opportunities to volunteer. There's a lot of things listed here we'll go through really quickly, and I'm sure there's far more than this. And again, if you have suggestions, please feel free to type those in that questions section on your GoToWebinar control board, or email them to us at info@johnson-center.org. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. But some of the places where you can look: libraries or senior centers. Often there are community bulletin boards in libraries that will have volunteer opportunities, or if they're not specifically advertising for volunteers, look for upcoming festivals and community gatherings that might utilize volunteers, and contact them to see if they could use any help. Same thing for senior centers. Contact them and see, do they want kids to come in and sing? Would they welcome art or just visits of young people coming and visiting with some of the senior citizens? Local nonprofit organizations and community organizations, particularly for causes that you or your family care about, are a great place to start. You know, here within our community in Austin, there's lots of organizations. The Autism Society often uses volunteers. We often have a call for volunteers for events and programs. I know that there are lots of organizations within the communities programs that serve the homeless community for different volunteer opportunities, community food banks, park cleanups. So check in with your local nonprofit organizations and see what opportunities might be coming up. Check in with your local museums. They may have upcoming opportunities, whether it's for events or special programs that they utilize volunteers and family volunteers. Same thing with service organizations. By service organizations, I mean things like PTA groups, booster clubs, service organizations like Lions, Rotarians, the Optimist Club. If you're a member, then you know of those. If not, you could contact to ask if there's ways to get involved. You know, the school organizations, particularly as your kids get into middle school and high school, will often have a service component. Things like the National Honor Society or different volunteer groups within the school have service components, and often will pull together volunteer opportunities for the students and their families to get involved. We've talked a little bit about local animal shelters, rescue groups, or wildlife centers, and ways to get involved, whether that's through collecting supplies, food, things like that that they need, or volunteering at the shelter. There are different age requirements, obviously, for all of them, so you'd want to check. But there are shelters that will let families come in and, you know, pet the kittens or take care of the bunnies. Some of them will let you walk or play with the dogs, depending on age and their rules. But it's a good place to start to contact them and see about ways you can get involved. Here in Austin, we have an organization that will allow you to foster puppies and kittens, including kittens as young as freshly newborn, and that's a great project. It's a time-intensive project, but a great project for young kids. There's a lot of responsibility involved, a lot of caretaking, and so that's one way you could get involved. Contact youth organizations and after-school programs. They often will have a service component involved. National parks and local parks and conservation organizations. There's often, you know, cleanup days or work projects, everything from cleanups, building new equipment, cleaning out equipment and supplies, clearing areas, playground areas, things like that. And then, of course, place of worship, such as your churches or synagogues, if you're involved, often have a service component as well. There's some great websites that you can look at for some ideas and opportunities. Here's just a few of them. I'm sure there are more, but volunteermatch.org is one that has a lot. Idealist, volunteer.gov has opportunities, including opportunities for families. Createthegood.org and generationon.org. Kidsactivities.net has a page there on community service ideas for kids of all ages. DoSomething.org, VolunteerNation.org has opportunities specifically for teenagers. And so this is just a sample of some of the databases that are online that you could go to get ideas and suggestions for volunteer opportunities. And on that note, I want to once again reiterate that once you and your family are involved with a community cause or organization, please, please, please always be looking for ways to promote and build inclusive volunteering opportunities for people with health challenges or disabilities. The ARC again has some great suggestions and tips on their websites on ways to do this, including starting with small inclusive projects that helps everyone involved gain knowledge on how to best engage and support volunteers who may need accommodation or support, and then building from there. I want to go a little bit, not off topic necessarily, but I want to segue into a different way that you and your family can be community-minded and get involved with causes you might care about and make a contribution, and that is through research studies. So this is just an example of some of the flyers that you can find for research studies that are recruiting pediatric participants. One of the biggest obstacles to conducting research, particularly pediatric research or research in kids, is getting people to participate in studies, especially healthy kids, to serve as the controls in those studies. We all want quality research to be done. We all want information and answers on how to get and keep our children as healthy as possible. But truly the only way that can happen is if children and families participate in research. And that's all children and families, not just those that have the particular diagnosis, disease, or disorder that's being researched. Healthy children to serve as controls are a critical component of any quality research, and it's one of the hardest things to find when researchers are conducting their work. So I want to talk just for a second about this. If there's a particular area of research that you and your family might be interested in, say you have a cousin who has juvenile diabetes, or a neighbor had pediatric cancer, or your nephew has autism, this can be a meaningful way to get involved with your community and help out. Yes, awareness is really important, and I don't want to underplay that. Fundraising for research and support also critically important, but you can really make a huge difference by participating in research studies in the areas that you care about. One reason that parents say they participate in the study is to help other families who are in similar situations. And we have to think about the fact that today our kids have more protections and treatments that are available to them for many childhood diseases because parents in the past made a decision to allow their child to be in studies to further understandings and treatments. But there's still so much left to learn in so many areas that research is needed, and we need research participants to sign up and take part in these studies. By finding a study and participating, you really create a great opportunity for teaching and talking about being community-minded with your child. They get to be a superhero like these kids on the screen. They have the chance to help find answers and information that can help children all over the world and for generations to come. So it's a great way when you're in what might feel like a sort of helpless situation when you have a friend or family member who is impacted by one of these disorders or diseases or diagnoses, to get involved and make a difference, even if there's not anything you can specifically do for them at that moment. There's so much more here that we could talk about on the subject, but we have another webinar that already covers over this that was presented some time ago that you can look at if you're interested or have questions about participating in research. Here's the link on where you can find it. You can also find it on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/The Johnson Center, no spaces. That's a great way that you can learn more about research. There's also different websites online that you can look up participating in research. St. Jude's and other organizations have information. It can mean as little of your time as filling out a survey. It can mean getting involved in a clinical trial or having a blood draw, or participating in other ways, but you're in control. You get to make a choice, but at least take the opportunity to look into what options might be available in your area at local hospitals or universities or research institutions. You can go to clinicaltrials.gov and find studies in your area, but all of that information is located on that webinar that I've got up on the screen right now. So we do have some time. I have a little bit of voice left. So I want to take just a moment to look through some of your questions and suggestions and throw those out there. Let's see, first, here's a question. Kathleen asks, how do I approach a program about volunteering with my daughter who has autism and doesn't speak? I think, that first step is to identify what her interests are and what kinds of things does she like to do, what kinds of activities does she find engaging. I've known people who volunteered sorting items at the library or stuffing care kits at shelters, filing things if that's something they're interested in or capable of, serving people, really depending on what her interests and skills and abilities would be. That's where I would start thinking about where you might be able to get involved, and then look at programs in your area. And if you call, I would first just say, do you have any volunteer opportunities or accommodations that might be available that we could volunteer? If they say no, ask if you can come in and talk to their volunteer coordinator about creating one. And go to, like I said, there's great resources online. The National ARC website has some great tips. If your child is in any programs where she has a caseworker or case manager or social worker or even a teacher, you might ask them to say, can you spell out for me the skills, abilities, and gifts that my child could bring that would be beneficial for this organization. Sometimes when it's not coming from the mom, who clearly, we're not biased at all, but if you can say, look, her teacher says she's really good at this, or her case manager says this is a skill that she has or could build. Sometimes some of our families do use volunteer opportunities as a way of kind of a pre-job training to get into an organization or a work environment and learn some of those skills that later might be transferred into employment skills. And so whether that's, coming in with a job coach or trainer or you or a therapist, but just talk to the volunteer coordinators, talk about what you can bring, talk about what support may be needed or accommodations and how you can help with that. And in general, I found that, people who are volunteer coordinators or working in community service are generally pretty open-minded and eager to help. And just talk to them. If you need more suggestions or have very specific questions, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to talk to you about resources and things that you could talk to them about. Let's see. Oh, this is a good idea. Someone suggests a resource to add to our list, which I'm actually going to put back up while we're talking. They said that check with your local public radio stations, that they often promote volunteer opportunities. I know that's true here. KUT, which is our local NPR station, does often air on the radio, as well as I think have on their website different upcoming volunteer opportunities. One thing I think I had on a slide but didn't mention is one way a lot of people get involved is through festivals and events. So, we're here in Austin, it seems like there's a festival or event every weekend, but that's true in lots of places, and most of them are reliant on volunteers. So, I was just at a comedy fest here in Austin. It was run by a lot of volunteers. I met one young man who did have a disability who was volunteering. He was a big comedy buff and was very excited to be there. And so look for those kinds of opportunities that match interest. And that's a great way to get involved. There's a lot of family-friendly festivals that would welcome families and children to volunteer as well, whether that's with setup, whether that's working at the festival or event, or cleanup afterwards. That's one great way. And a lot of those would be listed on your public radio, television, and television station sites. Let's see. Someone here also suggests they went to their local nursing home and sang Christmas carols on Christmas Eve. That's another great way. Nursing homes, I would contact them. They're always looking for ways to bring programs and activity and engagement to their community, to the people that are living there. I know our local schools often send the choirs in to sing, or some of the musicians to play. Some of the theater kids go in and do small plays, and it's a great benefit both for the kids who are going in as well as for the senior citizens who live there in the center. So that's a great way. You might start by getting your kids and your family involved. So I do think I'm kind of losing my voice, so we're going to move on. We are going to post a blog about this later this month, and I will include all of these resources as well as others. Here's a list of some of the articles and sources that we talked about today, and there'll be more in the blog that we put up. And if you send in any more suggestions or ideas, we're happy to include those as well. Like I said, as we went through, there really are so many great ways to get involved with your kids and teach your kids the value of that and reap all those benefits that we talked about. One more note caught my eye. Somebody said they volunteer at a local residential center for foster kids, and they bring in volunteers. There's one here too that I know about that does that. So again, look at resources and programs and nonprofits in your area for areas that interest you or your family. So I want to thank you for your time and attention. I want to take one quick moment to thank Angela Parks, who's one of our interns this semester, for her assistance with this webinar. I've got all our social media pages up there that you can follow, where we often post news about upcoming grants and scholarships and events and programs. So be sure and follow those, because those are the most up to date. You can check out our webinars on our YouTube channel. As I mentioned, it's youtube.com/The Johnson Center. This webinar should be up there within 24 to 48 hours, assuming my voice is held out and you all can still hear me. But please don't hesitate to send in your suggestions, ideas, questions. We'll be sure to include those in the blog post we put up about raising community-minded kids and kids who care. If you know of any specific ideas or suggestions or organizations that need volunteers, we're happy to play matchmaker and try to connect people. I thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Have a great day.